Good morning, friends. How are you? It is a gorgeous day here in Colorado today. It is springtime, and the past couple of days have been warming up. The days are noticeably longer, and I have been really excited about the flowers that I'm going to plant, the seedlings that I've been growing, and all the plans that I have for the flower beds and the plantings that I'm going to do around the property here. For those of you who have been following my channel for a while, you know that I am currently in the midst of building this flower farm dream. And it's astounding to me what I am learning from flowers, really. And it's a really beautiful reminder that when we allow ourselves to be fully present in our experience, whether it's an experience that we feel like we chose and that we stepped into willingly, or whether we feel like it's an experience that kind of just came out of left field. It's what Osiris talks about, by choice or by chariot. Sometimes we actively choose from our human level to move into something, and sometimes it feels like the choice made us, right? Like it's like a chariot crashing into our reality. But regardless of whether we feel like we chose our experience from our human perspective or not, there is great magic and wisdom to be found when we simply allow ourselves to be fully present in service of our experience. And for me, obviously working with flowers and seeds and plants and nature, I have learned so much from the flowers. I have learned so much from the seeds. And I've been thinking about how it's only been a couple of months since I've really jumped into these flowers. And it's amazing to me, number one, how different my life looks on the day to day, the things that I'm focusing on, the things that I'm, paying attention to, the things that are important and meaningful to me, and the act of showing up in service of another thing. In this case, it happens to be another living thing, but even if it's just an idea or a concept we're showing up in service of, it's our life. And whether we know what we're doing, or we think we know what we're doing, or we have no idea what we're doing, there's still so much to be learned and to be gained when we simply allow ourselves to be present with our experience, regardless of what it is asking of us. And this really calls into play the idea, which is something that I totally believe in, that we're never given anything or an experience that we are not ready for, that we are not prepared for, and that at some level we didn't choose. And what I have found is, regardless of whether or not we think we're ready for it, regardless of whether or not we feel like we consciously chose it, regardless of whether or not we have any idea of what to do or what's going to be asked of us or what we are doing, when we show up in service of our experience and just be curious about what's in front of us and commit to doing the best that we can with what we know and what we have, there's magic there. And some of the things that I have learned from flowers are pretty amazing lessons. And I wanted to share some of them with you. And the first one really is grow wherever you are. Grow wherever you are. Certainly there's something to be said for making sure you're in the correct environment. Certainly there's something to be said for ensuring you have what you need. But from the seed's perspective, from the seed itself, it just grows wherever it lands. It doesn't worry about, are these the right conditions? It doesn't worry about, well, what am I going to turn into? It doesn't worry about, am I going to live a full cycle, or am I just going to be a sprout? And I mean, the seed just grows. It just grows. It doesn't resist what it is. And that's the other lesson that I have learned from flowers, is be 100% what you are, unapologetically, without question. Be 100% what you are. I would estimate that I've started maybe 60 different varieties of plant at this point, and every single one of them is totally and completely unique. Every single one of them has their own requirements, their own life cycle, their own, little finicky things that they need. Some of them are massive, huge plants that are showy and, over the top. And some of them are small, simple, very, very unassuming forms, but all of them, without question, 100% are unapologetic about who and what they are. They do not stop to question what the flower next to them is doing. They do not stop to question if they are the prettiest poppy or the biggest sunflower or the brightest cosmos. They just grow as they are, letting what they are blossom literally, and they don't compete. They don't worry. They don't compare, and they don't apologize. Another thing that I have learned from flowers and seeds is that don't worry about starting small. This idea that small beginnings or little micro movements or really small, tiny, tiny baby steps, this idea that somehow they don't mean anything or that they're not powerful enough or don't make enough impact, that's just not true. Have you ever seen a poppy seed? Have you ever stopped to look and marvel at a poppy seed while you're looking at an actual poppy plant? The difference between the seed and the plant is astronomical. You would never think, by looking at a poppy plant and a seed, you would never think that this teeny, teeny, teeny little thing, smaller than the head of a pin, can produce this massive, gorgeous, abundant plant that can bloom year after year after year. And it all started with a tiny, tiny little seed. So don't let small beginnings fool you. Don't let your ego tell you that it has to be bigger or better or more powerful or more showy or more spectacular or more anything. Start with what you have, even if what you have is teeny, teeny, teeny. Just start. Small beginnings, big beginnings, doesn't matter. Just begin. Another thing that seeds and plants have shown me is to be very specific about what you need. Be very specific about what you require to thrive, to be successful, to grow and to flourish, and do everything you can to provide that for yourself, or to find people who are willing to give you access, find people who are willing to support you, find people who are willing to nourish you, find places and environments that are built upon the intention to flourish and to thrive and to grow and to support life. And be very specific about what you need. Be very specific about what you need. There's another thing I have learned from flowers and plants, and it has been a big one for me, about facing my own fears of failing, of trying, of succeeding. I'm realizing that fear of success is actually, for me, much bigger than the fear of failure. And I have killed a lot of plants. I have slaughtered a lot of seedlings. I have been forced in many ways to get really, really not cutthroat, but I have to be willing to cull and to say no and to sacrifice those things that aren't working anymore. So if a seedling is coming up and it's looking sick and it's not doing well and it's looking really weak, I know that's not going to create a strong, healthy plant. And that's setting that plant up for disease and, heartache and struggle and suffering later down the line. And it's my job to do everything I can to ensure this plant has everything it needs to be successful. And sometimes that means I gotta pluck that seedling out of the ground and throw it in the trash. So, not every idea that I have is going to be a flourishing, vibrant, vital idea, and that's okay. What's important is that I tried. What's important is that I planted the seed. What's important is that I showed up in service of it. And when it became clear that this idea just really wasn't going to fly, it didn't have legs, it wasn't going to, produce what I thought it was going to produce. It is not viable. It is not sustainable. Then I got to be willing to pluck that idea out of the ground and say, sorry, babe, it's just not going to happen. So even if you're afraid, you still got to start. Those seeds are just sitting there in their packets waiting. And some of them only have a very short period of time where they're viable. Some of them, if I don't get them in the ground within a year, they've expired. They're done. Some of them will go for centuries, some of them decades, some of them centuries. I could freeze some of these seeds and they would be viable like indefinitely. But you're never going to know until you start planting the seed. And there's one more lesson that the flowers have taught me. And this one has been a really, really challenging one for me to learn because I am very results oriented. I want to see the fruits of my labor. In this case, literally the fruits and the flowers of my labor. I want to be able to say, okay, here's the seed, and then I planted it, and then I did this, and then this experience occurred, and then this, and then this, and then in the end, I had this beautiful flower. I had this beautiful fruit. I had this beautiful creature, this being that I was partially responsible for bringing to life. And one of the things that I have learned, and this has been almost like a bittersweet lesson, will I be okay if I never see the flowers? Will I be okay if I never see things come to fruition in the way that I hope that they do? Because here is something that stopped me in my tracks the other day as I was planting some seeds. And I heard this little voice say, the seed will never see the flower. The caterpillar will never see the butterfly. The seed may never see the flower. The seed will become the flower, and then the flower will in turn give everything that it has, all of its energy and its life force, into then producing more seed, but one will never see the other. But that does not mean that the one who planted the seed is not necessary. You are the one who plants the seed, and although you may never see the flowers, although you may never see things come to fruition in the way that you want to, you hope to, is it enough to know that you have planted the seed? Is it enough to know that your idea took sprout and that it is growing and that it is flourishing and it is vital and it is vibrant? And can you continue to show up and give everything you have to who and what you are, to what you are creating and building, even though you very well may never see the flower? Even if you are sharing your ideas, sharing your seeds, sharing your thoughts and your nuggets of wisdom, you're never going to know where they're planted. You never know where they're going to grow. You never know how they're going to grow. You never know what the person who you gave that seed to is going to do with it. But that's not your job. Your job is to plant the seed. Your job is to tend to the flower. And if you're lucky enough, you will also get to harvest that flower and enjoy it. And here's the reality. Most of us get that experience in some way of being able to plant the seed, experience the life cycle, and then harvest the flower or the plant at the end. And that's beautiful and wonderful, but it doesn't always happen. But does that mean that the work you are doing that you may never see come to fruition, does that mean that that work is not important? Big questions. Flowers are wonderful teachers. And this month I invite you to live some of those questions. Show up, even if you're not sure what your ideas need. Continue to water and tend to them and intuitively tap in and ask them what they need and keep showing up. If you kill some of them, plant some more. If you plant them outside in a place where they got too much rain or too much sun or not enough, try again. Keep sharing your ideas, keep planting those seeds, and know that you may never see them come to fruition, and that's okay. Don't compete. Be 100% unapologetic about who you are. Just grow wherever you are. Just flourish. Just do it. Be specific about what you need. Don't worry about what the other flowers next to you are doing. And don't let the fact that maybe you're starting with a very, very small beginning stand in your way. Because you have no way of knowing what things are really, really going to turn into. So just do it. Roll up your sleeves, get your hands in the dirt, and do it. The worst that can happen is you're going to walk away with some lessons and some wisdom to apply to the next round of seeds that you plant. I love you.